Close enough for rock and roll.
Oh,
Ooh, I got it. It just told me that we're recording. Here we go. Got it.
yeah, you look great. You do.
You too. Your background's all diffuse. You've got some kind of programmer that like puts everything behind you out of focus.
Oh, does it?
So it looks like some kind of like it's hilarious. Actually, you look like
how diffuse is it? Is
like I mean the guitar is like blurrier, right? Not in focus. So it looks like it's super kind of like ooh, Instagram.
Oh yeah, it's tight. It's because I got a pro camera. Although I just realized I am going to switch my chair because one thing about this chair is it's got a real like gamers kind of vibe going on.
Yeah, there is something funny about that.
It's like
totally.
it's like great.
Total gamer's chair. It's total gamer's chair.
It,
it's the high. It's the high. It's the high
this part. It's like I'm
yeah. It's the support. Yeah, that's super funny. Just in case I get whiplash playing the studio.
It's funny. Actually just way better for my back. I was killing my back playing guitar because I record here too, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just like moving around and just like it was just all really bad. So, but I realized I kind of forgot that we were going to be on screen.
Sure. Switch it up.
It's not really the vibe I'm going for. The gamer vibe. Although everything I've learned this year has been from gamers, so I shouldn't really complain. It's true. Like all of this YouTube stuff, I just rip from gamers, totally, just watching their freaking Twitch streams.
Yeah.
So how are the shows, man? How's PEI?
Good. Yeah, good. Did 2 shows, got 2 more. They've been excellent. I never played the trail side. 4 in a row, trail side. We did book 2, and then they sold, and so we added a couple more solo.
Oh man.
Good.
Yeah, how's the vibe in the crowd?
Great.
Really?
Wicked. Yeah, really. People are super joyful singing. It's really nice. Fingers crossed. I mean, I'm taking a rapid test every day before I go downstairs. Just to be safe.
Right. Yeah.
We all just kind of operate on the faith that public health knows is, do what you can. So we're just following the rules, and it's been good though. People singing, and it's wicked. It's great. And I haven't played solo in quite some time. Totally solo,
Like beyond the COVID, obviously, like health.
I was tired when we started. I just come off 4 days with Dennis Ellsworth and Money Go Round, his new band.
Yeah.
So I packed up all the guitars and brought more stuff than I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't played. I haven't rehearsed. I'm just like, we worked till I was at the studio till 11 o'clock the night before, and then just got up the next day and put everything in the van and came over to PEI. So I got like 7 guitars with me and a mandolin.
Just because you didn't know what you were doing, you just like.
I actually use it, most of them. I brought one of them to do a little more recording with Dennis tomorrow. We're doing some overdubbing. I brought my electric piano because it's got organ stuff we're going to do tomorrow. And so and I've actually used all 7 guitars. I haven't played the mandolin yet tonight. That's what I'll be doing next.
You've used all 7, just because.
There's like open tunings.
Oh, right.
It speeds the show up if I have to tune and change for every song. There's the tenor, there's the 12 string, there's my main 6, and then I've got another 6 in a different open tuning, and another one in dropped full step down, and then I've got my electric, and then I've got a 12 string electric, which I just brought over to do some overdubbing for Dennis, but I played Snowed In on it the other night because it sounds rad.
Is that do you find, are you drawing from the whole catalog when you're doing these shows?
Yeah, although it's funny. I'll go nights. I'll go. Well, I'm like yes, but then I realize I haven't played anything from In Need of Medical Attention or Down at the Khyber, or even, truthfully, I think on either of the shows yet. I seem to have. Although I did a Thrush Hermit song last night. It kind of depends. 44. There's some new material I want to get in there, so there's some new material.
Some new, as in 44.
So I probably did like 6 or 8 from 44, and then by the time you do that, you get into songs that people really know, and then a few others, a couple of new ones since then, because I want to let people know that I didn't just sit on my ass through the pandemic. So I played a couple. Well, songs.
And you really haven't toured that album.
I haven't toured the album, so I did that, but I've even got new stuff newer than 44, just because it's just been writing, so it's like, well, I want to sing a couple of these now. People are just like, what,
Yeah, we
but
haven't gotten used to these
we haven't
44
even gotten
songs.
you to the 44 yet. Here's 88. It's good though. It's good.
The
Yeah,
new
really.
songs feel good.
Yeah, everything has felt really good. The crowds have been awesome, and actually hearing the reaction to the 44 stuff, it's cool. I mean, we've done a couple of gigs now, so it's not like it's completely untested, but a lot of it. I mean, I'm finding there's so much material. Making a set list becomes harder and harder, but also I'm at this point, I guess, out of the pandemic or still in the midst of it, I'm not sweating it too much. I feel like I'm just happy to be playing, and I get the feeling that people are just happy to be there. Like I could get up and do Led Zeppelin songs, like in a half-assed way, and probably people at least have a night out.
And you'd probably have a blast playing them.
Yeah,
I
and they'd
think
be
that
better than
is
my own
kind of
songs.
part of it, is that you
Yeah.
kind of, it's like it trims away some of the. I mean, I think that there was obviously stress before, and I think it's important to be a professional and everything else. And we were trying to, operate at our highest level. But there's something about coming back to this right now where it just feels like just being able to pull it off is the goal. But it also kind of roots you to something kind of something a little pure. You know what I mean?
We've lowered the bar, but it's a great bar.
It's a great bar. I don't know though. I mean, does it?
But the
question I
bartender
think
is awesome. Yeah.
The question is, does it mean worse shows? That's, I think, what's interesting about it. When you throw those things away, do you find that the show's any worse? It probably doesn't.
No, and actually, I'm not big. I've never been big on rehearsing. Like we do rehearse, but I don't rehearse solo at all. I can't do it. Like I'll try and remember some stuff at sound check, and I'll write cheat notes on a sheet if I feel like I'm going to forget the words. And somebody requested Park Avenue Sobriety Test, and I started the chorus last night, got to the first verse, and I was like, I don't know what it is in the song's narrative. So I was like, does anyone know the opening line of the first verse? And nobody could get it. I was like, I'll have to do that next time. I literally abandoned it. I just didn't sing it. I guess I could have Googled it or something, but I was like, I can't start this if I can't just jump to the second verse and have this song make any sense. So I just let it go. It was funny. I felt bad. I kind of let the guy down, but I hadn't sung the song in 2 years or something. And the opening verse just escaped me. Still, I haven't even thought about it since. I probably should learn it tonight.
Well, but I mean, it happens. It happens. And as you said, you get all these new songs that you're looking forward to performing, plus songs that you've written. I mean, the interesting thing is that there's this big gap between writing songs, putting them on a record, and then not getting them. You particularly, like, I think about you and Rose had records that were ready to go, like you really were about to release records right when the pandemic hit. So it's just this weird delayed reaction. You get it from your fans, obviously, who buy the record, but there is something different to having that, to testing those songs in front of an audience.
Oh, and so many of them were completely unroad tested. I mean, I played, pardon me, I played a handful of them on a tour preceding it that I recorded. There's a couple of performances on the record that were recorded at shows, the tune Matthew Grimson songs that I wrote in memory of Matthew. And then my version of Lucinda Williams' I Lost It was recorded at the Evergreen Theater on this acoustic tour that I did in like winter of 2019, early 2019, before I went down to Memphis and did some of that. But, that was just to sort of figure out the songs, and a lot of them changed in the studio. And so it's very much, 44 is very much like a studio experimentation record with a bit of road testing, but like not a lot. Brand New and Broken Hearted will be one that the Emergency played on, and we played that a little bit beforehand. So that kind of, and that actually shows when you listen to it, you can hear like, this is a band arrangement that got figured out.
Yeah.
A lot of the other stuff is like, this is something that Joe will cobble together. Not entirely, but there's definitely there's people playing on a bunch of stuff in Memphis was with guys in there, but it was still like all make it up as you go along kind of thing, not see how an audience reacts to it and then determine your arrangement from there.
Which do you do traditionally? You would have done that kind of.
I don't know. Yes and no, not so much anymore. Like up through Ashtray Rock, yeah. Scrappy Happiness, definitely some of that, yeah. The band records, but a lot of the time, like with 3, I just sort of made it up. Just some of the songs.
It's more of an internal studio experience.
Yeah, you're kind of studio experience. Yeah, and it's not, and then they change live. And I'm a big believer. I mean, I just think the live versions and studio versions are different. And the songs are meant to evolve, and the studio versions, if you capture a version that feels good at the time and it makes it on the record, great. It's probably going to change. It's probably going to change key. It might change form even on some level at some point. Not all of it, but there's definitely, I don't see, you're recording, you can put an amber if you want, but if it's going to exist outside of the recording, it's going to evolve. And it based on who you're playing with and how you're feeling and all that stuff. I mean, the nice thing about gigging solo right now is I can push the songs around. If I take a little longer, if I forget a verse, I can just sort of like strum the chord for a second till it comes back to me. And most people are none the wiser, you know. With a band, you need you can change keys. With a band, you need to be more rehearsed. And the emergency is pretty good at turning on a dime too. But even still, you need to have some semblance of memory in what you're doing. So, but I don't know. It's there. It's funny, man. The pandemic really did a number on memory, like because you associate not just with remembering songs, but just like people and sequence. So much of what we do is everything's relational, right? Where you were, you're doing and repetition part of it. You're doing something, but you're also like, I would sequence. I go, oh yeah, I remember when I saw you last because I was on the, and you're everything's in this kind of relational calendar that builds upon itself. And then when you remove that interaction out into the world, and you have been sort of pretty much in a relatively static environment for the better part of 12 months or 18, more than 18, all that those relationships are further away, and they're not as like, it's not as, so all of a sudden you're like, when was that and who, how, and all that kind of stuff.
It's almost
becomes
wild. Like before and after.
Yeah.
Like everything just kind of lumped. We used to play a game in the band that we called it
right.
Langenberg, because Langenberg's a tiny town in Saskatchewan that we played in, where we would test each other and be like, where did we eat? Like, what restaurant did we eat in when we were in Shaunavon, Saskatchewan? And then we would all, it's about who you were with, and then you couldn't remember, and you'd be like, oh, remember there was this, and then bang. And it was always through people, as you said, like through people's faces or whatever. It's the weirdest game, but you can do it. You've been with the same guys on the road forever. It turns into a very particular relationship, the band relationship.
It does. And
all those memories now seem to clump into kind of a pre-pandemic time.
And exactly. And what's interesting is everyone's got their different memories that they really remember, and their different versions of things. And so, and you often like, you arrive at the relative truth through bringing things up and talking about things and going, oh, remember when we were here? Oh yeah, remember when that happened? Oh, I forgot about that. And all of a sudden you kind of get, you get reminded, and you get reaffirmed, or your memories get challenged, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that wasn't here, that was there. And that goes on and on and on when you're on the road and you're doing this, and then you press pause on that, and all of a sudden, it's like this distant, remember the past together.
Yeah. And so how did it feel to be back with them? I mean, you recently played with them. How did that feel to be back with the band?
Great. Had an exceptional show at Harvest Jazz and Blues in Fredericton. Renee Mahalia and Micah Smith came up and sang with us. Mo's been out on these shows with us, Mo Kenny. Everyone's playing great, pretty joyful. That show was really, really, really fun. It freaked me out a little. There's a lot of people in that tent, and so it was a bit of but it really felt like, whoa, this is one of those shows, like big festival tent shows that I haven't experienced in quite some time. So it was the first gig out of this where I was like, where it didn't feel, I guess sort of after, I mean, it was because it was sort of unmasked and people, it's like,
it felt like before a bit.
It felt like before a bit, and it was a little maybe a little alarming on some level, or, there's that worry that something could happen, and certainly you don't want to be responsible for having people congregate if something happens with COVID. So, there's always that little worry in the back of your mind. But again, I've been like COVID testing myself before every show. So I know that I'm just, coming to the stage singing, making sure it's okay for everybody else who's there. But it was really good. And then we had, where else did we play? We had a gig in St. John earlier. Not a lot of band shows. I did a couple of duo gigs with Mo, and then these ones in PEI. So easing into it, I've been pretty cautious, uh, and will kind of continue to be, I think. But I will say it's definitely been a good spirit lifter to be playing.
I was gonna say, like, do you find it reassuring? I mean, I guess I'm speaking from my own personal experience too. Like, part of me was I was worried that it wasn't going to feel great. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I guess I
Hmm.
wasn't,
Hmm.
I wanted
Hmm.
it to feel great. I wanted the magic
Hmm.
of playing with my friends to be there. I wanted those feelings that as we've been talking, it felt almost like a distant memory. I was a little scared that it was going to be gone. And then
Hmm.
to have it be real, despite the audience. I mean, the audience was amazing too. And to have a react to be, but there was also just what was happening between
There's the
us
band
as
shimmy
musicians.
that's
It's
important.
quite
Yeah,
special.
it is special, and it doesn't always. I mean, I'll say I feel like we had it, and there was definitely um, the Fredericton gig was really great because I drove up with Dave, who plays drums, Dave Marsh, with in the emergency, and has for 22 years, since we started doing something in '99, 98, 99, before the Hermit broke up, the 5-piece emergency. But we drove up together. Everybody went up in separate vehicles, except Dave and I took the gear up in the truck, and had a nice meal the night before, and then we drove back as well. So I got to spend more time with Dave than I have in quite some time, because when we're back home, we're all sort of going, and we get together, rehearse or what have you. There's been a little bit of studio stuff, but by and large, um, maybe because the band and I have spent so much time together. When we get home, we often just sort of go off into our satellite off into our own respective little universes and convene when it makes sense and we got something going on. But it felt good to be back on the road, and just kind of catching up and talking. I don't know. And then we had a really great show. And yeah, that musical shimmy that you only get with the people that you play, like that can be a long standing musical connection that I have with the emergency was really great. And also and totally lifted and sort of reinvigorated by the fact that Micah Mahalia and Rini were singing with us, and Mo, but Mo's played with us before, but just having everyone on stage and all that vocal joy that comes with the Smiths when they're singing, and the audience just singing and going for it, and so everybody rose to the occasion, and so it just felt like, hey, we're a band and this is cool, and and rock lives.
Yeah, I know, but it's kind of that's
you
exactly
know
it. That's
yeah,
exactly it. It sounds ridiculous to
yeah,
say that
yeah, yeah,
music is cool and
yeah.
rock lives, but
Yeah.
ultimately, I think this is what
But
we've been.
it does need to be restated now and then for the record.
But
Um,
did you ever have any doubts? Did
well,
during the
I
pandemic,
mean,
did you have doubts that maybe music wasn't going to be cool, or maybe it was going to be, or like rock might have been
funny
dead?
question. What a funny question. What a legitimate funny question. Um, I mean, certainly the relevance of art gets kind of not challenged, but sort of re re I don't know, revisited, I suppose, when the pressures are put on society, right? And when you've got some really urgent physical uh, uh, concerns when it comes to healthcare, or and social, all the challenges to the social fabric that come when you've got something like a pandemic, and then all the ensuing chaos that surrounds it, from like a housing crisis and everything, right? Everything that's going on, and the lack of being able to congregate, which makes you feel like, which gives you that visual and social connection in a really really real tactile way. You're in the presence of other people. When you remove that, and now you have to do all these things through virtual means, um, and translate your art through that in music, it does sort of make you go, is this how I want it? Is this what I want from it? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe it's just me and a guitar, and that's sort of what it became for a while. I suppose I did a few online things, but you kind of, everybody sort of goes inward, I think, to some degree. Um, in a situation like that, and you just sort of. So I did a lot of reading. I did some writing. Wrote a lot of songs, a lot of which are quite mellow,
Yeah.
and introspective, and kind of started writing on the full moon recently. I found full moons to be quite productive. Maybe just tuning in a little bit more to the natural world, not in any huge way, because it's not like I've been out walking. I know you've been doing lots of walking, right?
That's
We've
all I
talked
do,
about
pretty
that.
much.
It's fantastic. I was doing it for a while. I was walking around the lake a lot, but I'm pretty sedentary, and I've been just coming and going from the studio. So it's not like I've been out and hanging out with Mother Nature too much. I wish I could say I have been, but by and large, I've just, I think more like tuning into, I'm just adjusting the pace, right? I mean, this is part of it. When you're just go, 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 I've just sort of always been kind of a workaholic and always just looking to and right now I'm feeling particularly busy, and I have a lot of things on my plate, from studio work to the handful of shows that we've got going on. And that's all really been really good, but it's actually been a strange acceleration again, because I've gotten used to this sort of slower pace of just taking my time with stuff. And
Of course. Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think there was a necessary gear shift.
Had
No
to.
doubt.
I mean,
how long had you been
what are you-
touring?
What are you going to do? Rip
consistently?
down an empty street like, I mean, that's the weird thing. It's like, if we were all going as fast as we were before, it wouldn't have been welcome, right?
Well, there
Wouldn't
was
have been
just
welcome.
nowhere to put the energy at first.
Yeah.
It had to go internal.
Exactly.
It had to, the
Yeah.
rhythm of everything had to change. And I mean, how many years had you been touring? You'd been touring. When did you start touring? 16?
Well, touring 18, right out of high school, but gigging 15, 16. Yeah.
Yeah. And then 18
Yeah.
was basically
Pretty much out of high school, and away we go. We'd have, that summer out of high school, I think we went to Ontario with Hartship Post, and then we toured with Sloan that fall in the fall, rather than go to university. So I've never spent this much time home and off the road. And there were some real rewards to it, as far as being around the family. Although, that being said, it's like, the other night I dedicated a song to Rebecca, wife. I was like, she puts up with a touring musician, and for the last year and a half has put up with a non-touring musician, which is entirely different. I wasn't the easiest. I wasn't in the best headspace when everything shut down for a while. I was gearing up to go on the road. My Sprinter had kicked the dust on the Solidarity tour. I'd gotten a new used Sprinter, a trailer for the gear, and a really nice keyboard that Dave and Mo were going to play on all this stuff. I kind of invested in all this stuff to get the road. And it was like, I mean, that was all, that was just stuff, not a big deal, but it was more just this, we were totally rehearsed. We were basically, we've got the show together. And then the world shut down. And so, and at first I was like, okay. And then I would go up and down, up and down, up and down. And I did that for probably 6 months, where I would be all right. And then I'd just be sort of stir crazy and kind of, and I think it's just such a change, it's sort of also, it's an interesting, and I mean, talking about the pandemic, this is what we do, right? This is what's been going on for a year and a half. So I don't sort of want to reside in that part of the conversation too much, because we've all sort of been around this a few times, but it definitely, as a performer, made me sort of question like who I was when you take that state, when the stage gets taken away from you, and what you're used to doing is having some claps at the end. Everyone, you that makes you feel like you're on the right path. And I've had the good fortune of having an audience that cares about what I do. And so when that sort of feedback, I guess is the best way to look at it, sort of wasn't there, or you'd have to go searching for it through digital means, that it just felt like, oh, I don't, and I sort of just got out of sorts, and I wasn't quite sure who I was or what I was supposed to be doing at that point. So I was a lot of floundering, but again, reading and just sort of, I don't know, it is what it is. But I wasn't, it was also tough. Like we homeschooled our son last year. He's back in school now, which was great. So I spent a lot of time with him. So that was the upside of it. And at that point we started to turn the corner there in the fall, but that first sort of 6 months across the summer, I don't know, up and down. Still
Well, it
is,
was just
still
really,
is. If
I
I'm to be
remember you,
honest, it's still not perfect. You know, it's still
no,
like a
no.
strange,
But it's
up and
about
down
kind of
thing.
doing some of that. I mean, I know we've talked, during the pandemic. I remember early on you saying something that really struck me, which was, it's kind of like showing up to the factory that you've worked in for 25 years and the door's locked.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, I remember
yeah,
you saying that. That was
yeah,
early on in the pandemic
yeah,
because that's what you did. That's what we
yeah,
did. That's what,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you did longer
yeah.
than I did in an even more intense degree. And I kind of, it really resonated with me. I was like, yeah, I mean, there's just the simple practice of habit that was gone.
That's it. It's
And
exactly,
beyond,
and
and
it's
then
not
there's the
this.
feedback. Then there's the kind of like emotional kind of support that we get as creative people from the audience and that
That's right.
connection. And all of that was gone, but there was also just the habitual, schedule structure to the days.
And there's what you do with your time, and then there's also the strange sort of good fortune and privilege of having some wiggle room whenever everything shut down. It wasn't like I had to go find work right away, nor could I have. But it was kind of like, okay, so I've got I have time, I have this, I'm safe, I'm home, I don't have to I guess I don't need to worry, other than it's worrisome out in the world, we got to be careful. But so I felt like I have nothing to complain about, yet I'm still unhappy, right? That's
Yeah.
sort of, and then that almost makes it worse. Then you're kind of in a and so that energy can kind of build and be a little bit tough, and I did find, but then things, it led me to different places. It gave me much more time with my family in a way. Um, Even though, I guess we were all sort of under the same roof, so it becomes more intense. And it's this and that. I would come and go from the studio, but our son was home a lot, and my wife's an artist and she works at home, so that was tough having us around,
Yeah.
because she was probably the one who, her environment changed greatly when we were all under the same roof too, because I was always coming and going. But this bookstore that we got going on down in the cafe in front of the studio, we renamed the studio Fang Recording. Uh, Started a little bookstore in the corner, dropped the new Scotland Yard handle, started a bookstore called Friction Books, little curated selection of books, um, and renamed the Cafe Morley's after Brendan, who's a barista. But the little book thing, that was something that kind of hatched when Eric and I, who works in the cafe, were talking about books. And I've been reading a lot through the pandemic, and I just thought, oh, this would be kind of neat. And let's put a bunch of energy into that. We sort of put that together, and little things that I don't think would have happened had I been going full tilt.
Right.
There were things wouldn't have changed there. And I don't think, the one thing that was happening before, there was a lot of movement. So it didn't feel like things were crystallizing, right? Then you stop and things feel kind of like they crystallize a little bit. But even when you're moving sometimes and you're gigging all the time, things are changing, but sometimes you're getting stuck in some patterns or some things that you would change if you had the time, or
For
you
sure.
might or a little space in your life, and you come up with something interesting, you take a different tact. But you're on the train, and you got to rock that show, and so you're like, I won't change the set list tonight, that one worked, these kinds of things. But you shake it up a little bit or a lot, like a pandemic, and all of a sudden you find yourself figuring things out a little differently. And so I wouldn't have come across those things had it not been for this. So, everything.
Yeah, it takes months, but then you find a way to. I mean, if
Yeah.
anything, that I know about you is that you have this extraordinary. You have a desire to work. You love working. You love
Mhm.
working hard, which I've always appreciated, and you have a lot of creative energy. So I knew that it was going to find its way into the world. It was just finding its way in different ways when it was so, again, that the habitual way of doing it was on stage and records. Then all of a sudden there's this big kind of
Yeah.
block,
Yeah.
but it's still all there. All that creative energy is
Well,
still
I always
there.
feel like good when I have a little project. And what I found
Yeah.
was through the pandemic, there were a lot of little projects that got started. Some stuff, like I filmed a mock episode, or kind of a pilot, with Shotgun Jimmy for a children's show. I have it in my Dropbox. I might put it up on my window in Patreon sometime soon. It's pretty funny. It's a half-hour thing that I edited with Jimmy and I, making up a kid's song on the spot. It's hilarious. And we were thinking, I could pitch this. I had all these, like, when the pandemic hit, I just thought I'm gonna, like, you know, make a kids show or something. And then it's sort of, I don't know, kind of start things up and go, oh, maybe that's maybe more work than I thought it was, or a lot of like sort of little things started, maybe didn't finish it, little, or I just do a little. I go, that's enough. That was fun. Cool. What's
Right.
next? Not to and probably because 44 was this big, super connected concept, shenanigan, and so I didn't really have a whole lot of. I was like, I'm not going to think that conceptually just yet. Again, got to kind of get that out. That's not out of my system yet, and so just little things have been sort of what's been fun, and then some of them turned, with the bookshops, turned into a real thing, and
With the greatest theme song ever, I must say.
I will say I was proud of that jingle. I mean,
It's
the
amazing,
jingle
and the
was
video for it's so well done. I've watched it a number of times. I recommend everybody who's listening to this to watch the jingle, watch the video, because it's just it's got so many amazing local musicians in it doing
yeah.
verses.
Yeah. Everyone. I mean, I have a demo of myself doing all the parts, and it sounds chaotic. I just sound like I'm just going from style to style, and I was like, this is funny, but this will be so much more fun if I can get everybody else singing it, and it won't make me sound as crazy. So I reached out, and everyone who sang on it was just so great, and and I like the fact that I had a laugh making it. And when we were filming it with everyone was having a good laugh. And then the response to it has been a lot of like laughs and smiles. So made me happy just to work on something just for the sheer sake of kind of just trying to be sort of joyful and have put something out into the world that just because the shop's a nice vibe. There's this community feeling to it. The studio's been used by lots of folks. There's a really nice thing going on in downtown Dartmouth right now. Our music scene is amazing and full of all these talented people. And I just kind of thought like it'd be nice just to try and cram a little bit of that energy into a minute.
Well, and I think that's exactly what it
Fly it out into the
does.
world,
It really does. It really showcases, again, like, sure, we haven't seen each other for a while, most of these musicians, but to see them all in one video, it just reminds us that we are a community of musicians on the East Coast,
Yeah.
and we're super
Yeah.
lucky. Like, there's these
Yeah.
incredible talents. Amazing.
Yeah.
And that video is just chock full of them. So, I mean, I think there's that. There's just the joy of knowing that everybody's kind of connected to one another out here, and we're lucky. We're
Yeah.
really, really lucky. And,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
No,
And I think, and I think, and I mean, I think where we go with music right now is interesting. I mean, who knows? I mean, obviously this pandemic's changed everybody on some level, right? How can you not? You can't live through it and not. And it's been, and we're still in the midst of it. And I don't think we're going to see we don't entirely know what the repercussions of it are yet from a business point of view, from an emotional and mental health point of view, which would be the most important piece of the equation as far as I'm concerned, and physical health too. And even, spiritually, it sent a lot of us, inward and thinking about things and maybe recognize that we all of a sudden it really is this reminder of how interconnected every aspect of the world, just not just on a material level, but in this sort of emotional and spiritual connection and the way things reverberate, why we do things and where we place our energy, and how a lot of the things that that are of such benefit, there's also the shadow side to them where it can be challenging, like if you look, we can fly a plane around the world, and that means that if we can come home and move diseases around the world faster, all these things that are remarkable also have these challenges that come with it. And so we realize the systems that we're a part of are hugely complex, and that we have to sort of find a way to sort of navigate the ups and downs of like all this energy, all this wild energy, and then when you press pause on the way on its ability to move, right? Boy, you can see the fissures show up, all of a sudden you're applying pressure, right? That's
well,
what
there's
it
so
is,
many distractions, right? There's so many distractions on a personal level, on a social level, that now we're focused, and we're sitting with it. So in our own lives, we're sitting with ourselves. We're sitting with, okay, well, what sustains me? If it's not the applause did something for me every night, well, it's gone. So
That's
do
right.
I still, is music meaningful if I don't have that? Well, yes, it is. But why and
Mhm.
how? And what does it sound like?
That's right. That's
You
right.
know, what does it sound
And
like when that side of the equation? And what do I do that, what is it that's going to sustain me now if it's not travel, if it's not my job day after day? What do
that's
I
right.
look for? And so I think that
Mhm.
that's that internal turning. And I think hopefully some some movement for each of us towards some sustainable feeling, some sustainable places that people can go that aren't related necessarily to for us in this
Yeah.
business applause or nightly being away. Like what can we
Yeah.
get that's going to be
Yeah.
deeper than that, what's going to be more meaningful than that? I think that's what people are searching for, or this has forced us to search for it, because otherwise it becomes quite unsustainable
That's right.
psychologically.
That's right. That's right. And you sort of, so you've got the brass tacks of it as a business, and there's these aspects of the business that aren't super sustainable, or that don't function super well, or that are also like, it involves a lot of travel, that
Oh
there's
yeah.
a cost to the climate with that travel. There's all these sort of like, you know, sort of aspects of, of the upsides and downsides. Let's get people together. What happens when we get people together? Now you can't get people together. And then you can use the digital world to bridge some of those things and changes it. But then there's the repercussions of that. It's like, great, I can go play a show online. Oh, and some people showed up. Cool. But now it's just that much more time on a screen. And it's weird because I can't read anyone's, I can't see anybody.
Right.
I'm talking to myself, those are kinds of, the sort of, and all of it again, when you're in the midst of obviously some, watching all these crises unfold, you're like, yeah, why, who am I doing this for? Um, Ultimately, our art is a strange one, music, because there's the self-expression of it, and there's something that you just feel possessed, it's compelled to do. I do. I don't know how I could put a guitar down. I mean, there's times when it's not in my hand a lot of the time, but I got to come back to writing a song sometimes, or singing one. It just, but I don't. But of course, you don't want that to be sort of what defines you. But you do have. We all have these things we do that, whether it's somebody goes fly fishing, or they
Mhm.
knitting, or whatever, these
Well, we're so
things that,
lucky in that the things that we do, that thing
yeah,
that you are compelled to do, happens to also be our profession,
that's right.
which is this
Exactly.
remarkable,
Exactly.
remarkable privilege that, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like when you say that, the idea of being compelled to play guitar, I don't know if I've been bored since I started playing guitar. Truly, like, bored like I was before. You know what I mean? Like
Right. Right.
I will always find something there. Not that I play it all the time, but it
Hmm.
has been a partner in my life
Yeah.
since I
Yeah.
found it, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
that is a huge privilege to be able to feel that, to do the thing that we're compelled to do.
Yeah. 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 And that's not something that I mean, I know I do take it for granted sometimes, but I think maybe the pandemic has been a good sort of, hey, don't take that for granted,
Yeah,
or
I feel you. I
or
feel
get
you.
get back to what it is about it that got you there in the first place, and hold on to that for a while, because you're not going to go bring it to other people right now, and so I think that's that reset was, and I'm sure, on you could be having this conversation from another professional point of view, a lot of, and so no matter dance, and then within the arts, I mean, it's been hard on the arts for sure, but it's like, but also it's been hard on healthcare workers in an entirely different way,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, or just people working in a grocery store,
Oh my
at
God, there's
At
so
Green
many. That's the
Gables,
thing. I mean, we have it. I feel like I relatively, of course, I have it quite easy.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
in the line of fire
yeah,
here. I'm not in the line of
yeah,
actually being. I can be home in most cases. I have been home.
yeah,
My brother's been,
yeah,
working in the emergency room, and so like, it's a different level. And
yeah, yeah,
so it's
but
a level of exposure and level of stress. But I think the thing that I'm really curious about now is this idea, that we've touched on, this like idea of, it's made us refocus. It's made us feel, I think, maybe a little bit more grateful, or not take for granted some of the things that were rolling before. But now
mhm.
we're kind of heading back into it to some extent, slowly. certainly slowly, in most places. And I'm grateful to be moving slowly too. I'm in the same boat.
Mhm.
But for you now, what do you think you carry with you into the next stage? Like, are you still seeing, are you looking ahead and going, okay, now I have a sense that this is what I'm going to do for the next 20, 25 years, 30 years. Let's just rock. Like, how is your brain there on that?
To be honest, I think I don't know. I'm not. I think more and more what's happened for me over the last year and a half is to be like, let's see what happens today.
Right.
To be, because I do think one of the lessons out of this, lesson may be the wrong word, but one of the things I'm taking from it anyway, and also because there's all this uncertainty around the climate, around movement, like the things that'll come with if the pandemic continues or changes, evolves, these kinds of things. But the climate emergency is really, it's a worrisome, all these things. But we're living with uncertainty. I mean, this is what many folks do all the time, but maybe was a is a bit of a wake up that how interconnected we are, but also that we don't really, as much as we like to feel like we're in control of things, we're not. I mean, that's sort of what it is. You realize how much when things are rolling smoothly, you're like, great, I can do this as I see it, and I'm going to vision this thing and let's make it happen. And then all of a sudden, some limitations are put on your ability to do things because of whatever external circumstances in the rest of the world, and you realize, oh wait, no, we're joined at the hip here. Like this is always a negotiation, so it could change on a dime tomorrow. And so knowing that, I am trying to be far more like living in the present. And I mean, I think about, I don't have another plan to go do something else other than music. I don't have a backup plan. Part of the reason I'm still in it is because I left high school and started gigging and didn't really prepare for some other avenue. So I figured it out. I just thought, I'm going to make this work. So I'm going to continue
So
to
there's
try and
never
do
been a
that.
plan B, really.
Not really. No, I mean, the closest thing to a plan B, which is running parallel to plan A, was like, okay, I've got a recording studio now. Maybe there's a commercial component to that. So I'm not always there, but it can run. And well, now there's a little store with a cafe, and there's a tenant in there. Taz is in there, and we got the bookstore. So yeah, like I've got some other things, but they're all sort of dovetailed into my musical corner, um, and and so sometimes I think, oh, it'd be neat to go just learn something else, or go to school and whatever, study something, and anything could happen. But I mean, I still got to go make a living. And this is one thing I know that I can do. But again, even what that looks like is different when you can't put as many people in a room or you have these limitations. So I'm just kind of just following that. But I do think there's always going to be a reason to write a good song. I hope, that's my hope, is that even if it's not me writing it, like a good song's always going to mean something, because music is kind of like I mean, I think it goes back to some really fundamental things about about human beings and how we, it goes, music is this thing that continues to evolve, and also it goes beyond words. Even though I love language and words, and I'm always trying to write words, I care about words, and but in a world increasingly kind of like sort of I guess not hemmed in, but to some degree hemmed in by language. It's important that we want to learn how to use it well. But it's like music reminds you that it's not just all about what you say, it's how you say it, or what you left out, what wasn't said, how it made you feel, and then a musical, like, and when you're listening to instrumental music, you go into this imaginary space that has nothing to do with language, or it speaks a different language. And that's the beautiful thing of musicians, is even when you're not singing, you're communicating. There's a language going on that goes between people that reminds you that it isn't all verbal and written. It's emotive, it's sonic, it's and it's, I don't know, so that's it's a
I
reminder of that. I mean, I'm taking a little detour here, I suppose, but
No, I feel very much the same. I think that's kind of what I was thinking of too. That just that joy of being on stage with other people. What made me realize is that magical language. I guess the more I think about it now, because we've been removed from it, and you just realize it as a practice. It's totally strange. It's magical. It's transcendent.
Mhm.
Playing
Yeah,
music, engaging in music, trying to write songs is a tremendously strange and magical opportunity. And
yeah.
as you said, like a good song will move you
Well,
beyond,
something.
and sometimes it moves you in 2 seconds. It moves you
That's
within
right.
4 seconds. I mean, I think about you describing to me the first time you listened to Led Zeppelin. You didn't have to wait. I mean, even though Robert Plant is one of the wickedest singers ever, it was game over before he even started singing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, there's some alchemy at work for sure.
there's alchemy. It's like,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
kind of a wicked thing to be. Again, maybe it's because I was just doing it, but like I've always been a band nerd. I was, in like high school band, and I always loved that idea of being in a room and playing and listening to the other instruments and trying to play in tune and play the
Hmm.
same, be together in this thing.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
guess being separated from it for a while has just made me realize that it's like it's pretty magical. Like
It
it's
is. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
transcendent and weird, as you
It,
say,
it,
it
it,
is
it
an
is, and
alchemy.
it's ephemeral. You can get it back, but it's the moment. And it moves. It's in constant motion, right? And as soon as you try to lock it down, which is what a recording is trying to do, you're trying to get it down on record. Yeah, okay, you lock it down, and you go, okay, did it work? Does it continue to move people as a recording? But the memory of a live performance, that movement through it is great. One of the things that I really missed, I didn't realize how much I missed it, but I noticed it on these band gigs, particularly, and even solo, but band, it's more apparent. Is and it's funny. It only dawned on me a little while ago. People have often asked me about my connection with my dad, right? My musical connection with dad, because I learned guitar from him, grew up with him singing. But my mother danced when I was younger. She was a dancer. She studied out west and taught it for a little while as well, I think. But so she was always into movement, and she had a cool record collection that she liked to dance to and stuff like that. But I'd often not thought about my mother's influence on my music. It was often my dad's, even though I would listen to my mom's records. But I'd often get asked about my connection with dad. But I realized I really like moving when I'm playing. I love dancing. I'm not good at dancing with other people. Every time I do, something happens. I have a scar on my chin from dancing with a kid in grade 1, split my chin open at school. And then I have a scar here from dancing at a wedding with a stranger the night before my wife's birthday. I was in Toronto. I had played a wedding, and a friend asked me as a surprise guest, and I came out and sang a song as a surprise guest. I had a couple of drinks because I was nervous. I didn't know anybody, and this woman who was one of the guests there was like, "Do you want to dance?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was dancing with her, and I think she thought I was going to dip her, but I wasn't. And I put my hand behind her she sort of started to slip, and I wanted to brace her fall. She was going backwards. I think she thought I was going to dip her. And in trying to steady, like to make sure that her head didn't hit the concrete floor, I went down into it, split my head up. So I'm not good at dancing with other people, but I am pretty good. I do like, I like moving when I'm playing guitar. I love, like when you talk about Zeppelin, watching Jimmy Page, the way he would move. Chuck Berry was a real hero of mine, watching the physicality, the way he plays that herky jerky guitar, and you can see his legs moving. Bruce Springsteen in that Rosalita live video was just running around the stage going crazy. That was a real influence on me. And right in the early Hermit days, we were just like freaking out, just rolling around on stage, jumping, whatever we could do. As the emergency got going, more and more I started to develop. And in the Hermit days, this kind of footwork thing, I was always trying to dance with my feet, and my guitar style started to develop around the way I'd move my feet. So if I'd hear something and I'd sort of, like sweep my foot across the floor in a certain way, I'd try to do like a bend on the guitar, or I'd play guitar in the way that physically I was gesturing. And it started to be kind of one thing would inform the other. I'm going to play guitar like this. I'm going to dance like this. I'm going to dance like this. I'm going to play guitar like that. And when I'm in the studio, sometimes I'm sitting down doing solos. I'm like, stand up right now, like see what happens when you stand up. And all of a sudden, a different place in the rhythm and the solo would show up. And so that's what I realized. I missed this movement from gigs through the pandemic. So when I got back and we were playing that show in Fredericton, Harvest Jazz a week or two ago, whatever it was. And it's like just the gestural thing. And even solo, sometimes I can back off the mic and I can move my hand and people are singing and you feel like you're moving energy around the room, right? Like you're pushing air around, as a band through a PA, all that force of air. When the kick drum hits and you feel the movement of air, that movement through a room with people in it, and it's reciprocal. It comes back to you from the audience. That's what gets lost when you try and take this into the digital medium. That movement. If I'm dancing by myself in a room doing a live stream, it doesn't. I don't know. It's just not the same because when you're gesturing to somebody that you can see right there, you're like, come closer, just don't dance with me, I'll fall, but let's dance at a distance, that kind of thing, so that kind of thing is I don't know, this is just a long and winding way of saying that to me is as much what the gigs are about as anything I could sing any of my songs. I love singing my songs. I like taking them out to people, but just that movement, that's also frankly it's exercise, and I was missing it through the pandemic. Like really, I'm huffing and puffing on the last few gigs because I just haven't worked my lungs like that, and I haven't been sweating in the same kind of way. So it feels really good.
Well, it's a letting go. I think that's the thing that happens.
Right.
It's a letting go on the performer side to the spirit of the music. That's what's moving you, right? You're being moved. Yep. You're letting yourself go, where you're just feeling that the rhythm of the music, the air, the energy, however your body is telling you, and everybody does it a different way. And you're not having to dance with someone else, so you're negotiating just with the energy of the music, not the energy of something else. Maybe it's the energy of your guitar, but in doing so, the audience is watching you, and they too start letting go. You're feeling that, right? Like that's not what's happening through the digital realm. That's being lost. So you can be dancing, but you don't know if they're dancing at home. And I bet if you saw them, it might actually, maybe a little bit of that would be happening. But there's something when it's live where you see that.
Well, it'd be delayed. It'd be delayed too.
It would be out of time and look really ridiculous.
It is what it is. We're probably getting there.
Letting go, I think that is.
That's right. That's right.
It's not to get too philosophical, but it's kind of like letting go of the rational part and kind of embracing that strange magic, the strange magic that we kind of forgot.
That's right.
And you can kind of forget when you're all alone and you're trying to make that magic, but there's something that happens when everybody's together and the drums are pumping and you're engaging with the rhythm and that energy. I love dancing too. I'm the same way. I just love it so much, but I think dancing is one of those things, like my kids are dancing now and you kind of try to explain. I don't know if I have a theory of it, I'm kind of like, just try to feel the music essentially. Like it starts with the music.
There's no wrong way to do it, right? There's no wrong way to do it. And the beauty of it is it does feel like it connects you to something instinctual or just kind of I don't know. It does. It's like you let go. Like it defies. It just allows you to, I don't know, open up a different place in your heart or your mind, spirit. All these kinds of things. You just sort of, and it doesn't even require physically moving that dancing. You can be watching, but you're still picking up on that. It's like unlocking little places in your it's just making space and maybe allowing two things that you would have not thought could occupy the same space because this is that and that is that and nary the twain shall meet. Is that the expression? Did I say that right? Yeah. But all of a sudden they can occupy this. You can be, two things could be happening at once. It's sort of, I don't know. It's like it shimmies up everything. It's the snow globe, right? It just you kind of let it fly, and that's kind of what it is. And you don't know where it's going to settle. We'll figure that out later, But right now it feels good that it's snowing,
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah. It sure does. It's interesting to hear you say kind of the idea of taking it day by day. I don't know if I'm there yet. I probably should be, but in some ways I've been more reassured that this is what I meant to do. But I don't know what it's going to look like. I was curious about one thing, just to, just not to get back to the brass tacks, but you've talked a lot about this, the Patreon thing. How do you feel about that? Oh, you've started a Patreon page to kind of monetize your creative output in a different way.
Yeah, I try.
Does that feel real? Does that feel good?
Um, so far it's been kind of cool. Yeah, it has been. I mean, it's just, you know, basically I did it when after we made the Down at the Khyber live stream revisit. We revisited Down at the Khyber, and I recorded the whole album again, filmed it, and presented it as a live stream where I hosted it live, but we played this recording that we'd done of it with the video and everything. And a lot of work went into it. I mean, it was like, we're just going to play a little live stream show that takes me 2 or 3 weeks to put together as like a movie about, where we play Down at Cairo. It was great. And it turned out really well. And we pressed it on vinyl, all this stuff. Sold some tickets to it. But I thought, this is cool. I'd like people to see it. I could put it out into the world for free, but people just bought it. And I thought, maybe Patreon would be a place where I could sort of archive some of these digital shows that frankly were kind of costly to make, but also and then create some new content, also experiment in the studio with some collaborations here and there. Like I did a session with Bill Stevenson a couple months ago that was really cool. He's an amazing piano player, Bill, obviously. But him and he sang one of my tunes, and then I put some words to an instrumental of his and sang it. And it was just such a fun session. And the Patreon support that I've got has helped fund those. Basically, I don't see it as really a money maker for me in any big way. It's more like a way to do stuff in the studio. So I've got, Thomas, who runs the studio. So if I want to do something in the studio, he makes some dough. The guy who films it, Mike Hall, and then the other musicians who I collaborate with. And so by and large, it's not really about trying to become a big part of my income. It's about a way of facilitating some creative explorations. And I'm not really active on social media in any big way. Like if I write something for Instagram, I type it on the typewriter, take a picture of it, and send it to my guy Eric, who posts it for me. I don't really check Instagram and my socials very much. I'll tune in once in a while and look at stuff because it's nice to see what people say and stuff, but or things get passed along to me. But I find I get really overwhelmed if I spend too much time on social media. So I've sort of stepped back from that. So the Patreon was a way of kind of like being able to connect a little more directly with some of, my sort of big fans who's supporting me there. And I will say, like the last couple of months, I felt a little slow on it. Like I haven't put as much there as and it's $8 a month. So it's not like I don't feel like I don't want to feel like I have to deliver the world for $8 a month.
Yep.
It's a place where where if I can get some, some cool exclusive content that goes up there,
Well, it's
on a
never
monthly basis.
halfway. I've seen some of it. I mean, the content is fully. I mean, like everything you do, it's pretty deep. It's pretty well thought out. It's not exactly
Yeah.
thrown together. It's usually pretty deliberate.
Yeah. And I know that, like, look, when people are subscribing to something, I subscribe to things and then I unsubscribe. So people come and go from it. They come check it out for a couple of months, what have you. Like, I don't know. I'm going to keep it going. I don't know what this pandemic looks like this winter. I don't know if things are going to lock down a little more. I'm not touring in any big way till next fall when we tour 44. Probably have some spring and summertime a little bit if things get going, but it's still going to be pretty. So this is a nice way to just like keep active in the studio and keep connected to my audience in a way that maybe, I guess, if I was on socials more, I would do, but then there's the cost of being on socials more, which is sometimes a mental cost, so I kind of can't. And so, yeah, the Patreon things, and it's a neat model, actually. It's still a work in progress, and I'm always looking for feedback from people. But even then, sometimes I'm like, I always intend to do more, but it's funny, to try and do stuff well takes time. And I don't want to just put stuff up there arbitrarily. Sometimes I'll just do something like where I'm just singing a song on the phone and it's just the phone sound or what have you, little bits. But I do like putting together like quality studio sessions when I can.
Yeah, and they are quality. I mean, I think the reason I asked is just because I find alternative models interesting to speak to people about, and so
and we're in a time where like that digital piece is kind of hugely important for musicians, and for me, like the Patreon thing was a way of trying to figure out, okay, what could I do something here, and what would it inspire me to do. Maybe it would lead me to do some collaboration that I wouldn't have done otherwise.
Yeah.
So like the session with Bill, I probably wouldn't put it on the calendar the same way.
Yeah.
I've been working on a Kraftwerk cover with Garrett Mason, which
Naturally.
isn't done yet,
That's
but it's pretty
amazing.
cool. We got some video. I don't know if definitely the audio is coming together. I haven't stitched the video together. It might be a bit of time before I get that out, but it's pretty cool. And so yeah, it's just fun stuff like that. I did a session with Mo Kenny. So yeah, it's good. What do we do? You know, like we find our ways of bringing music to people, and if we can't go deliver it in a club, then I want to keep being creative. And so there are some pretty neat ways to do it using the internet. It's not my favorite place. Again, like that physicality of a show is just something that I realized, like that's the way I play.
Mm-hmm.
Is in movement, right? And so
Well, and again, you started at a time where, like, I do wonder sometimes with 20-year-olds, you know, who have grown up in this, maybe
they would see it differently.
They would probably
Yeah.
see it very, very differently. And I admire that. I love it.
Yeah.
I love speaking with younger people about their relationship to making music and getting it on the internet and connecting with fans, because it's very real. It's very real for them. In fact, collaborations happen that way, and I work that way, and I enjoy it too. But I find it really interesting to kind of think back. I think, you know, again, I think my formative years really are pretty much high school band, you know, and then playing in the early bands and playing in the trio with Alan and Kyle. And for you, it's the Hermit at 18, you know, and playing that's rock and roll in a bar and in a club.
And it was before the internet. It was before the internet. So I remember life before phones were in my hand, and before there were these, and with a box of maps under the seat in the van to figure out how you're going to get to the venue in Saskatoon. And if you're going to advance the show, it wasn't via email. You had to call the club until somebody finally answered. You could say, "What time sound check time?" Like you would spend weeks
like,
trying to advance the tour.
Who are you?
Yeah,
again?
yeah, exactly. Brush project?
Like, oh.
Is this Brush project? No, it's Thrush Hermit. Okay, yeah, we'll get that right on the poster. You know, this kind of thing. So, you know, like there was all this mystery. There was all this mystery and all this like, well, if we break down, we're going to sleep here in this van. And, you know, like you didn't know where you weren't using phones to get around, all that stuff. I mean, none of this is to say like
that you miss it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I romanticize that stuff. I do think that the world, I think the internet's just such a fast moving thing. The jury's out on what it's doing to us. We're not going to know, you know. It's wild. It's crazy how much the world has changed. And there's some pretty devastating aspects that come with that, I think, from a mental health point of view, and our physical health, because we're just not moving as much either. But, you know, there's also some incredible access and opportunity that comes with it too. It's hard to tell. I don't know. I had no problem with the paper maps. It was fun. Somebody had to sit next to you and navigate while looking at a map while you're driving into town. And I remember we had this cell phone, the early cell phone. We bought one of these ones. It was like a huge one in a bag. You know, it was like it had this it was massive. And I remember we broke down outside Wawa, between Wawa and the Sioux. You know, like in total, there's still no cell service there, I think, you know, but I remember standing on the roof of our half-size school bus, holding it to the sky. Ian was up there trying to get, we were trying to get cell service to call a tow truck, you know, to no avail, you know, and, but just, you know, that was that was like 97, like a cell phone in a bag that was larger than your own telephone. Yeah. So, you know, those kinds of things. But I mean, that's just you know, somebody would tell that story. I mean, like you hear these stories of the early rock and roll tours where like Elvis or Jerry Lewis, they were touring in like a station wagon. You know, there was no vans that you get stuff around with. It was just sort of, you know, everything
like
was just
had like a bus, you know what I mean? These crazy Count Basie would have this like giant bus filled with like a big band. Like a big band, and they would drive overnight. It'd be like 30 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and people getting around. I mean, and you were always working with whatever technology was. You didn't know where you were. I mean, you know, you're always embarking off into the unknown a little bit. But I would say the one thing about the internet is now you can go like, where to eat? Well, let's look at Yelp or let's look at the reviews. But you used to just go like, let's try this and find out. You know.
Right.
And then your review would be, you know, it's just funny how much access we have to stuff that can kind of sort of improves our experiences theoretically, because we can curate our experiences to things that fit our taste. Where's the best coffee in town? Great to know. Cool, thank you. But that place with the really terrible coffee, I might have had an amazing experience there. That I
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Well, which is,
You know,
to go back to what we were saying at the very beginning, which is sometimes what you talk about with the band. Those are
yeah,
those memories, right? When you're like, hey,
that's
you
it.
remember that crazy experience we
Yeah,
had when we got that
exactly,
terrible coffee?
exactly,
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
unforgettable.
Yeah, yeah,
Unforgettable. It also speaks to the idea of playing with people in a room where you let go,
that's right.
to the mystery. It's not to a track. It
And
doesn't.
again,
And as you said,
exactly.
you're not just playing the recordings as they were recorded once. They morph over time.
Yeah,
You let go. There's points when you play certain songs with the emergency where it's like, okay, we don't really know what's going to happen now.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
gonna let it.
So,
We're gonna let it open for a sec.
so you bring that into the context of what we've just been going through with the pandemic and that uncertainty, that sort of what does tomorrow look like, and you remind yourself that like uh, every aspect of life goes back to that same bit of like leaving yourself open to the change. And if you see um, the the challenges that some of those things would be, if things aren't always easy, or obvious or spelled out based on an algorithm or a review or whatever, then all of a sudden, you have to work a little harder or you have something that you're like, oh man, this really went sideways. And you're like, hey, it went sideways. I learned something. That's cool. I had to figure out what happened when it went sideways. That we remind ourselves that like that adversity is how we actually grow as people.
It's scary.
And it's tough, and nobody
Yeah.
wants to deliberately drop themselves into it. And by and large, my version of adversity has been pretty mild. So I know that, but I do think that in trying to navigate the world and the changes that we're in the midst of, and the changes within music and within the music industry, it's like, all right, it's all part of the grand experiment. Let's see what we can make. How do we make lemonade?
Yeah. 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 How do we embrace the mystery?
Yeah, yeah. And how do
How
we
do we do
embrace
it?
the mystery? And that's the
Yeah.
fun of it. So trying to find the joy in that it's a good reminder to get back to that, because it's there. It's just it's hard. By and large, I think I think of myself as optimistic, but then that gets shaken sometimes where I'm like, oh, I really feel down right now. Or I'm not seeing this glass is half full, and so you're working, but I kind of trying to come back to that optimism, but I don't want it to be sort of like a blind optimism. It's more like it's not about everything being okay. It's just it's the idea that we'll learn even when it's not.
Yeah.
And trying to come to terms with that, and then just taking that approach means, okay, maybe then that unto itself is okay.
Yeah.
Redefines what okay means, I suppose.
Yeah. 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 No, that's it. That's
I
it.
don't know if
Makes
yeah,
total sense, and it's not easy, as you said. It's not easy, but trying and that blind optimism it's not doesn't feel strong enough.
yeah, yeah,
Doesn't
and it
feel
can be a bit naive sometimes, and
doesn't
I
feel
mean,
strong enough
and
for
yeah,
certain things. So
yeah,
no, I
yeah,
hear you. This has been really great, Joel. I knew it would be. Thank you so much
yeah.
for
It's
spending this
fun.
time
I
with
love
me.
chatting with you, David, and we've had our chats off of camera and tape, that are always great, but this one's fun to just have one that we share with the world, and
Yeah. Well, I really
you know
appreciate you taking the time. Good
always.
luck with the
Yeah,
rest of the shows too, man. Have
thanks,
fun.
man.
Have fun
Yeah,
embracing the
yeah,
mystery, just letting it go and
yeah, yeah,
dancing with your guitar.
yeah. Dancing with myself.
That's right. Safest musical partner you got.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Good.
Right on.
Talk to you soon,
Take
pal.
care, man. Thanks,
Cheers.
dude.
You too.
Peace.
Thank you.